back to an obscure tour at the edge of the internet. I am your host, the Nameless Tour Guide, and today we will be heading back to the northern Undead Asylum. But you may be noticing I'm heading in the wrong direction, and that is because we have a few more symbols to collect along the way. And you may be noticing that some of the numbers on the screen are different, and that is because I have been grinding in the depths off screen and getting us up to level 44. So now we have a strength of 32 and a dexterity of 18, which is very important because we are not just collecting symbols. In this episode, we are also collecting my favorite weapon in the game, the Black Knight Halberd. And so I have harvested 10 living specks of humanity, shoved them in my chest, to raise the drop rate of the Black Knight we'll be meeting today in hopes that he will give me his weapon. And so as we loop around Lordran, we'll be travelling through the Valley of the Drakes. And as discussed, the Valley of the Drakes is a collection of symbols of Priscilla and her children. And here we have the first of those symbols, the rope bridge. There is one other rope bridge in the game, and that is in the painted world of Ariamis, which is a world separate to the world of Lordran, though the rope bridge creates a connection between the two. And the rope bridge is here in the Valley of the Drakes because the painted world of Ariamis was once the home of Priscilla and Velka, and this was a place for them to live separate from the world of Lordran. And here we have what appears to be a slumbering dragon. I've made a lot of assumptions about the nature of Priscilla and Velka on the tour so far, the main one being their nature as scaleless dragons, though this symbol here will start to bring these ideas to the fore. So forgetting everything I have discussed before about Velka and her nature as a scaleless dragon, notice this dragon is rotting and decaying away. Its skin seems to be bandaged, like there was an attempt to heal the wounds of this creature. And underneath those bandages, we see skin, purple and black, the colors we see in the miracles of Velka, goddess of sin. This is a dragon that seems to be dead. We can get quite close, and this dragon does not stir or move. Now notice the head and position of the mouth. This is important for later. Also notice that this dragon is curled up into a ball like it is desiccated. And now by targeting this dragon, we can see that it is actually alive. It is either unaware of our presence or chooses not to move. And now that we have harmed the dragon, it awakens and spews bile across the world. Notice also that the lower half of this dragon is missing. Now I've avoided the vomit of this dragon, but it will actually do poison damage to us. Unlike the gaping dragon, which corroded our equipment, this dragon spews poison. And the safest way to deal with this poisonous undead dragon is to rain divine justice down upon it from on high, avoiding any direct conflict. And while we finish vanquishing the undead dragon, let's talk about the fact that the undead dragon did not respond when we walked past it before. We got the dragon's attention by hitting it with the fireball, but it can also be awoken by simply getting next to its nose. This can be read in many different ways. Is the dragon sleeping? Is the dragon captivated by what it holds underneath it? Is it too weighed down by sorrow and does not wish to move? Or is it simply unaware of our presence? All of these are ways of seeing this dragon and Velka, as we've discussed before. The last idea is the one I wish to focus on right now. Is this dragon blind? If you've noticed, the rats in the game have white cloudy eyes of a blind person. They scamper away when they hear a noise and attack only after you've gotten close enough for them to smell you. The rats are also blind and behave just like this dragon. This hints towards the idea that Velka is also blind, as we discussed in the catacombs. Again, this idea is here in the first game, but for me it is really made clear in Dark Souls 3 with the blind character of Irina of Kurim. And the blind character in that game is always talking about unseen rats that are nibbling away at her flesh. Rats like the ones we found in the depths. And now that we have beaten the undead dragon, let's see what it held underneath it. The soul of a proud knight. A dragon crest shield, and the Astora's straight sword. The remains of a knight a symbol of a ruling dragon, and the sword of the ancient city of Astora. I'm sure I'm starting to sound like a bit of a broken record. Astora's straight sword. Straight sword of an unknown knight, likely one of Astora's superiors. High quality weapon with a powerful blessing. I've concluded that Velka, whoever she was the ruler of Astora, from following a set of symbols, starting with the warrior's shield, and the colours of Velka's miracles, to the Labrys axe, to the giant rat with the Labrys axe in its eye, to the rat's tail's talisman, and the black-haired nature of Velka, with a little help from the black candle on the butcher's table. In that collection there are no need for symbols of dragons, but here we have the sword of Astora sitting in front of this undead dragon. The simplest conclusion being Velka is associated with undead dragons, but then we also have the dragon crest shield. A crest is a symbol of a noble family. Velka is also the ruler of Astora. Therefore, she is also a dragon. The dragon crest shield. Shield of a nameless knight, likely a high-ranked knight of Astora. One of the enchanted blue shields. The dragon crest shield greatly reduces fire damage. Now, if these collection of symbols are not enough yet for you, do not worry, we will be getting to more symbols that reinforce these ideas later on. And now as we leave the Valley of the Drakes, notice the Astora straight sword also has a divine blessing. We are able to ascend a mace with the same power, using an ember we found in the Darkroot garden. The divine blessing is the mark of a divine blacksmith. Menace, not yet a god, but a loyal servant of Gwyn, made that sword in Astora. The enchanted shield is a naturally enchanted shield, a feat that will require great craftsmanship. This is a piece of work from Menace, also during his time in Astora. What we were seeing in that simple diorama is the vision of a superior knight crushed beneath the poisonous undead dragon, the dream of the family with a dragon crest destroyed. And as we head up towards the most important part of the tour, the battle for the Black Knight Halberd, notice the elevator here. On the other side of the Valley of the Drakes, the 8 Daughters of Chaos, 2 large, 6 small, are here as well. And don't worry if in the last episode you found no joy in the answers for the differences in the numbers or the differences in the sizes. We will be returning to these contradictions later. And now we have looped around Lordran and once again entered the Darkroot Basin. This is the Western Land, a realm of men and giants, and one of the realms that fought for the love of the Daughters of Chaos early in the First Age of Fire, before the reforms of Gwyn. And now silence as we witness one of the most important battles of the game. Great, now I have the Black Knight shield. It's harder to get the Black Knight shield, and now I have it. The Black Knight that was standing here, with the weapon that will not be named, was a symbol of Priscilla, as her chosen weapon is the halberd. The abyss that she was looking over is a symbol of Menace, and over here we find something else. The Grass Crest Shield. Old medium metal shield of unknown origin. The Grass Crest is lightly imbued with magic, which slightly speeds up stamina recovery. A shield of unknown origin. I've claimed that Velka is the narrator, from the symbols of the rat that we saw at the beginning of the game. And I've also claimed that she's one of the most intelligent characters in Lordran, who knows everything that occurred. And yet here in this item description, we see a crest of unknown origin. Sometimes Velka will not name things for effect, such as the firstborn of Gwyn. People had stricken his name from the record, and Velka carries on this tradition, not because she has any problem with the firstborn of Gwyn, but because she is reflecting the attitude of the people of Lordran. Sometimes Velka does omit details because she herself wishes to forget about certain events or characters, but also because she is a character with an agenda. She is trying to shape a narrative. When Velka told the noble knights of Astora to make pilgrimage to the undead parish, she did not tell them it was to send them to their doom. She simply told them it was their duty to ring the Bell of Awakening, and once it was done, they would know their true destiny. This was not a lie, but it was a deception, and that is what we are seeing in the item descriptions. This shield is made of some metal, and most people in Lordran don't know where it came from. Now remember the art installation of Idas, the gargoyle battle. This was made to warn the pilgrim by showing a different face to Velka and Manus, but it was up to the pilgrim to see the meaning for themselves in hopes of breaking the cycle. And we can do the same. Velka controls the narration, but she does not control the physical realm or the NPCs, so we can see more than what she tells us, and where there are contradictions, we can reach our own conclusions. What is the name of the Witch of Izalith? Who is the nameless blacksmith deity? Where does this shield come from, and what is it made of? This shield was found next to a knight with a nameless weapon, a symbol of Priscilla looking over the abyss below. The abyss, a symbol of Manus, of course, being the father of the abyss. The shield has a grass crest. Half of it is gold and black, the other half is silver and purple. And the shield also helps with stamina recovery. The Mask of the Child. This mask belongs to the naive child, slightly raises stamina recovery speed. Putting all this together, we can see that the shield represents a child of Priscilla and Menace, Princess Dusk of Ulasil. This occurred after Menace's era of iron, as it is not an iron shield. Menace has one last phase in the metallurgy cycle, and that is the Age of Steel, when he returns to Lordran and rules Ulasil alongside Priscilla. This is why Velka does not wish to acknowledge the origins of the shield. Princess Dusk is a symbol of Velka being betrayed by her mother, as Priscilla took the only thing that ever mattered to Velka, Menace's love. In addition to this, Princess Dusk will be acknowledged in other item descriptions, but those items do not contain unified symbols of her mother and father like this one does. And now switching gears, it's time to return to the last of Havel's men, locked away in the watchtower by a dear friend. So while I fight Havel's warrior here, notice the chains that are on the outside of his shield. Notice that these chains are also up and underneath his armor. They hang from below, as though the person inside themselves is chained. And I'd just like to point out that that would not have happened if I'd gotten my Black Knight halberd. If I'm a bit distant and distracted, it's now because I have to decide what weapon I should continue the run with. The original plan for the series was actually to come down here and try and get the Black Knight halberd right at the very beginning, so that if I missed it I could just restart. But I think I might be a bit too far in to restart at this point. Oh well, we'll continue on anyway. After all, what else is there to do in the land of the undead? And while we continue the fight, let's think back to one of the very early episodes of the tour, the Way of White episode. There we discussed Lloyd's talisman, Havel's talisman, the chains that bound the moon. There we discussed how the chains represented Havel's relationship with Seek the Scaleless. It was Havel's job to keep Seek the Scaleless in place as leader of the Way of White. This was a rather simplistic description and one I gave at the time, as Havel and Seek's relationship is described explicitly in-game as an antagonistic one. But with everything we've seen so far, we can see there was a more complicated relationship between the two of them. At one point, Havel and Seek were allies. Then Seek stole Priscilla and Velka away from Havel and took them to Nito below. This is why Gwyn was able to pit Havel the Rock and Seek the Scaleless against each other in the era of New Londo, in the era where the Way of White was created. There was already bad blood between them. Though we can now see a deeper meaning to the talisman, Havel the Rock was meant to keep Priscilla in place, bound in the painted world of Ariamis, where she was out of reach of Gwyn and anyone else. So what went wrong? Why could Gwyn suddenly tempt Priscilla? Why did Seep the Scaleless panic and turn on Havel the Rock? And with that final blow, the last of Havel's men have fallen. Notice here the soul of that warrior. It is golden. This is something that we see with all the knights of the game. Every knight of the game has a blessed soul and does not glow blue, but glows gold. Havel's Ring. This ring was named after Havel the Rock, Lord Gwyn's old battlefield compatriot. Havel's men wore the ring to express faith in their leader and to carry a heavier load. Notice the visual design of the ring, named after Havel the Rock. A large center stone surrounded by smaller stones. This is a visual representation of Havel as a giant and a commander of an army of men. My feeling is Havel the Rock and his men controlled the northern regions of Lordran during the era that Menace ruled the east. Notice also the use of the term heavier load. Just like the Mask of the Valiant Father, these were men who were not pinned to the ground by their heavy burden. And of course, the Knight of Havel is not here because he is lost. He is here because of the divine blacksmith in the Darkroot Garden. Let's just quickly refresh ourselves on the description of that key. The Watchtower Basement Key. Key to the basement of the Watchtower in the Undead Burg. The basement of the Watchtower forms a stoned cell. There are rumours of a hero turned hollow who was locked away by a dear friend, for his own good, of course. And now just notice these two torches quickly. They have a golden light, but notice also there is a slight green inner light as well. The other torches of the game as we ascend the Watchtower here do not have that inner green light. And returning to the basement key description, the line, for his own good, of course, I've used a variation of that line several times during the tour. And that's because it's key to the philosophy of Dark Souls and the motivation of the characters. Andre of Astora tells us that everybody is mad and wicked, but they aren't. Everyone really does truly believe that what they are doing is good and right, and recognizing that helps to see a lot of the motivation and ultimately failings of those characters. As we pass through the Undead Burg, I would like to pause and take a moment to show you something I've never noticed here on the Watchtower. This comes from Johann Burgermeister in the comments. Many episodes ago he told me there was an image of the Capra demon on the Watchtower, and my immediate reaction was that would not surprise me in the least, but I'd never noticed it before. And that's something I find exceptional about the Dark Souls storytelling. The world is insanely consistent, with simple details abounding in the world. Consistent, simple details on such a grand scope is an amazing feat of craftsmanship, and something that never fails to impress and astound me. And here we have it, the silhouette of the Capra demon, a symbol of the Witch of Isolith. Johann told me he saw this in a video by Dave Control, a much more famous tour guide than myself, who has really sweet videos, and if you found this tour, you've probably already seen his work. This one comes from his demon video, where he does a great job of collecting all the images of demons in Lordran, and you should really go and check that out if you haven't. You may also be starting to realize why I am not shocked about this detail being here, a symbol of the Witch of Isolith being at the top of the Watchtower. It is also a good reminder of something we haven't discussed in a while, the room with the Capra demon, grass and vines growing from solid rock. And it won't be the only time you'll hear about the Burgermeister this episode, as when he first jumped on the tour he completely ruined one of my big reveals in the comments. I was so angry I almost deleted the comment immediately. But this is one of the great things about the consistency of Dark Souls, and what makes it such a beautiful piece of artwork in my opinion. That consistency allows the ability to find common details as a collective. But I don't have time for all of this philosophical discussion as we are now re-entering this home in the Undead Burg. Here we have an aggressive hollow soldier representing Quelaag, the Chaos Witch. And behind her, we find a symbol of the Fair Lady. The symbol of the Fair Lady looks out over the staircase to the basement. And when we descend these steps, this creature will become enraged and chase us down the stairs. The Fair Lady will not chase us when we descend into her realm, but she is the guardian of things forgotten below. And in this second section, we see the remains of black fire at the back here. This is where we picked up the black fire bombs. This is Izalith proper. It is a home that is still lived in. The tables are still set. There is food, there is drink. Life continues here when all the other homes have been abandoned. Notice the small raven feather quill on the table here, a symbol of the Witch of Izalith. And right here in the entranceway, kindling has been gathered for a fire. Now I have some time to quickly go over 2 anomalies in the game as part of the things I've noticed but have ignored because of technical reasons. First, the Black Knight we just fought will not enter the passageway leading to the bonfire, though it will chase the player to the watchtower. Is this because the Black Knight fears the fire or the Valley of the Drakes? It may be, but I think it may just be because there is a break in the navigation mesh that the AI uses for pathing, as that spot is a place where 2 areas are coming together. Or the AI has been told not to go into tight spaces because it wields such a terrible weapon. The other is the monsters at Firelink Shrine will respawn without resting at the bonfire. If you reach the area of the Undead Burg where it splits between New Londo and Seif's Tower, and then head back to Firelink Shrine, the creatures will have respawned. The same for the skeletons in the graveyard. They will also respawn fully assembled. Is this the latent power of the first flame bringing them back to life? My guess is it's because of the NPCs in the game. When you rescue Griggs or Laurentius and return to Firelink Shrine, they will be waiting for you, and I think to achieve this effect, the NPCs in the area have to be respawned. But these are just guesses, and you may find something more important in these events. As we head back, I also want to give you a heads up that I'm contemplating changing one of the symbolic identities at Firelink Shrine. This happens with every playthrough of Dark Souls I do, so I'm glad it's still happening, as it's a lot of fun to puzzle through these things. And it gives me a way to show you why I believe the wacky things that I do about this game. I haven't fully decided yet which way I will go, but it has to do with the symbolic identity of Big Hat Logan. I've never been fully comfortable with my interpretation of him as a symbol of Seif the Scaleless. It works, but it doesn't feel good. And when I was doing the episode with the Crestfallen Warrior, it bugged me even more when I was reminded what the Crestfallen Warrior says about Big Hat Logan when he finally arrives at Firelink Shrine. There is a theory I have about Big Hat Logan being a symbol of Velka, the goddess of sin, but it involves a somewhat wackier theory, and it's something I've noticed for a couple of run-throughs, but I've never found a good place to put it. And a quick interruption to acknowledge Dom Holozina's arrival at Firelink Shrine. But the more that I focused on this wrinkle, the more certain things started to fall into place, and the more that I've been looking at it, the more things make sense. But we can chat all about that next episode when we meet Big Hat Logan. And it will also be a good way for me to show you where all this nonsense has come from. And now the crew is almost all assembled. We have Dom Holozina and we also have Framp the King Seeker, the primordial serpent, the Caduceus, that burst from Velka's back. And Petrus of Tharaland has returned from the catacombs, where he has abandoned Rhea of Tharaland. And now we'll use an elevator trick to uncover what is above Firelink Shrine. Below this area here was where we found the artifacts associated with the Way of White. And over here on top of this roof, we find the Undead Asylum Floor 2 Western Key. We were given the Floor 2 Eastern Key by the Astora Knight that we met at the beginning of the game. So let's remind ourselves what that key said. Undead Asylum Floor 2 East Key. Key to the iron bars on the east side of the second floor of the Northern Undead Asylum. The Undead Asylum is a giant undead prison segmented by countless iron bars. Even if an undead were to escape from a cell, passage to the outside world would not be gained so easily. And now let's compare that to the description given on the Undead Asylum Floor 2 West Key. The difference here is that the last passage says, "But even if a hero found a key in Lordran to liberate this prison, would he have the means or the heart to ever come back?" And as we fall down here and look up, this area where Rhea of Tharalim was praying now starts to look like the area in which we fought the Asylum Demon. And as we head back up, note the raven that has set up our Firelink Shrine this whole time, above the statue of the Witch of Islip sitting atop a tree. In that statue, the witch herself appears to be a bird nesting, holding her child at a distance. The bird is a symbol of the Witch of Islip, but it's more than that. It represents the witching tradition in Lordran. Witch Beatrice has feathers on her staff. The Chaos Witch Quelaag has a plume of feathers on her back. The raven feather quill that we found in the symbolic home in the Undead Burg. And this raven now serves Velka as it flew us between the Asylum and the Firelink Shrine. And this is important because there are two types of magic that are associated with the Witch of Islip: witchcraft and sorcery, the realm of Priscilla and her children, and fire sorcery and pyromancy, the realm of the Daughters of Chaos. Quelaag is called the Chaos Witch, but Quaelana doesn't give herself any such title. This is because there is a difference between the two groups of children and their magics, and where there is an overlap, such in the case of Quaelana, there needs to be a reason for that overlap. Notice the sticks of this nest appear to be just like the sticks we saw bundled in the doorway in the home in the Undead Burg, the kindling for fire. This ties the metaphors of a nest to the metaphors of fire in the Dark Souls world. Not the symbolic stuff that we've been discussing, but actual metaphors. A nest is a warm place and a source of life. The flames perform the same function in Lordran. They are the source of all life. In the logic of the world of Dark Souls, burning humanity is the same as a crow feathering its nest.